Hi, I'm Aldo. Welcome to Plays the Thing, the channel where I share my experiences prepping and playing tabletop role-playing games. In today's episode, we return to ShadowDark, that dark fantasy role-playing game written by Kelsey Dion and published through her company, Arcane Library. More specifically, we're coming back to the campaign that we're running in the Gloaming, which is the sandbox setting that appears in Kelsey's Cursed Scrolls #1, the zine that she also publishes through the Arcane Library. For those of you who've been watching for a while, you know that we have quite a few sessions under our belt in this campaign. In fact, this is Play Report number 10, and I'm going to tell you what happened in a moment. First, a little bit of a recap. The characters have been for quite a few sessions now exploring Bittermold Keep, which is location in the Gloaming that the group's wizard Renwick had heard about. And Renwick suggested that they come to Bittermold Keep to see if they can find a remnant of the Green Knights. The Green Knights were an order of knights that 100 years past had fought off some of the demonic forces that now infest the region. And so Renwick was hoping that if he could find one of their old fortifications, he could uncover some lore, some spells, some magic items, some resources that the party could use to fight off these demons. Unfortunately, they have found nothing related to the Green Knights. Instead, they have found the Bitter Molds, who are the now degraded remnants of the family that originally built the keep and who are now worshippers of Mugdoblub, which is an ooze demon lord that is invading this dimension along with other demon lords. They encountered the Howlers, who are a group of barbaric halflings who have established mental communication with Mugdoblub and have become worshippers of him as well. And now the Howlers and the Bitter Molds are kind of competing with each other to see who can be the bestest of the worshippers. They've encountered a community of catfish people who are mutated and have proven aggressive. In fact, they have killed one of the party members, who's Gendry, the dwarven cleric. And most recently, they discovered that Mugdoblub himself is in a cavern in the dungeons under Bittermold Keep. And so they were left wondering, should we confront Mugdoblub? At the end of last session, they told me no. They felt that Mugdoblub was out of their league, so they decided that they were going to pull out of Bittermold Keep, go back to the coast to summon the ship that would take them across the lake and back to Marin's Hold, and that along the way, or maybe after reprovisioning, they would go to an island that was on the lake on the path to and from Bittermold Keep, where Rowena, the witch, had noticed a tower peeking out from the treetops of the forested island. I was told that that was going to be our next destination. So, in terms of my prep, that's what I prepped. Cursed Scroll #1 doesn't give me any details about the tower. It says that it exists, it gives some general background information, but nothing detailed. It leaves it up to the game master to flesh that out. So, I scoured the internet for a resource that could help me flesh out the tower, and I found one, and I will share about that resource next video, because although I spent the week prepping that, that's not what we ended up doing in this session that I'm talking about today. Why? Because when we convened to play, they did say we are going to the tower, but we want to do one thing first, and that thing ended up spiraling into several things when we actually sat down to play. So let me give you a rundown of what happened. But before that, let me tell you which characters were involved in this session. At the table today, we had Renwick the Wizard, played by Jason. We had Rowena the Witch, played by Lauren. We had Ursula, the half-orc fighter, played by Mike. We had Asher, a warlock, played by Mario. We had Kraith, a warlock, played by Andrew. And we had Ren, the bard, played by Dan. When we sat down to play, they got a little meta on me. Jason in particular said, I know this is meta, but a couple of us are an experience point away from achieving next level. And next level would be handy if we're going to be fighting demons. I said, fair enough. Now, I've been using a system where I've been giving a little bit of experience points for combat situations, as well as treasure, of course. There was a room that they had bypassed several sessions ago where they knew there was an ooze that lived in these holes that were in this pockmarked wall. They were like, our characters, I think, would want to weaken Mugdalblub, even if they can't fight him directly. So maybe it would make sense for them to pass by that room and kill that ooze to basically kill one of Mugdalblub's servitors. I'm like, well, if you want to do that, that's fine. They made their way back through the dungeon, through one of the Howler checkpoints, made a charisma check to convince the Howlers that were at that checkpoint that it would be okay for them to go back, but not go directly to the Howler leader and report to him later. And then they went into the room with the ooze. And when they got there, they got a little bit timid. They were kind of like, okay, there's the wall with the holes in it. And they all kind of stood away from that, and they started like firing arrows into holes, hoping to draw it out. Rowena made an illusion of a halfling adventurer that was walking around rather haphazardly near the holes, but they were really keeping their distance from the holes, and nothing that they were doing was drawing out the ooze. So Asher, the warlock, finally got tired of it and ran up to one of the holes and banged it with his shield, sending like reverberations through the walls. And then he jumped back, and sure enough, that was enough to draw the ooze out. The combat began, and initially it was drawn to the illusion of the halfling that was kind of jumping around. I decided that if it would hit the halfling, it would realize it was an illusion and then go for something else. But the ooze actually kept missing the halfling, which allowed the other characters to kind of like attack it for a round or two before it would turn their attention to them. So that was going pretty well. Unfortunately, there are two other oozes that live in the same room, and they came out of the holes when the combat started. So suddenly, what they were hoping would be an easy experience point earned turned into a little bit more of a harrowing combat. At one point in this combat, Asher went down. One of the oozes like just flopped on top of him, burned him, and was consuming him. And the other characters came and tried to like engage that ooze in combat and drew it away. One thing that happened is that during that part of the combat, Renwick went into a neighboring chamber where there were these fountains that they knew had healing magic in it. What they didn't know is that the healing magic had mutating properties. Renwick went in there to harvest some of that healing potion, and as he was doing that, Asher rolled a natural 20 on his recovery check, woke up with one hit point in the midst of this combat, crawled his way out of the room, and then ran into that room and dunked his head in the font, and he drank the water from it. And we rolled on the mutation chart, and he came up with his teeth like pointed and bigger. And Mario did a great job of like playing that like a 1970s or 80s monster movie where like a villain is like, or a monster's looking at itself in the mirror and like baring its teeth and kind of showing the audience what his monstrosity is, right? So it was kind of a fun scene. They ended up taking out the oozes, but it cost them a bit. So that was eventful, and that took a while of play. Now, they did not report back to the Howlers. At that point, they decided to leave. Then we had the second complication when Mike rolled a survival roll for Ursula, who has the ranger background, failed, and led the party astray. They were trying to get to the coast in one night. They got a little bit lost, and they ended up having to spend a night in the wood. Undoubtedly, they were going to get to the coast the next day, but they had to spend a night in the wood. They set up watches. On the second watch, I rolled a random encounter, and it turned out to be a marrow fiend, which is a very powerful demon. We're talking about second and third level characters at this point. And so when I rolled that, I was like, oh my God, what is going to happen here? Is this going to be a TPK? I didn't want to just throw the monster into the midst though. So I wanted to ask some details. First, I rolled to see how far away the marrow fiend was, and I rolled far. So I said, okay, if it's far, there's a chance that it's just moving through here and that it won't notice them. They'll probably hear it, low growl, a movement in the woods a distance away, but it might not see them. It'll at least have to make a roll to notice them if they don't have a fire lit. So I asked, okay guys, let me ask a question. What does your camp look like? They described it, and then they came to the question of light themselves. They're like, should we make a fire? and they were running low on torches. They were running low on rations too. So they're like, maybe we shouldn't light a fire because we're going to need the torches to create the bonfire that the fishermen will notice to come and get us. If we don't have that, we might be hard up for making that bonfire. So at first they were like, I think we're just going to sit in the darkness. I'm like, okay, that bodes well for them. But then Renwick was like, well, I have a light spell and I'm taking first watch. I'm like, okay. So he made his light spell roll. And so they had a light for the first watch. But that only lasts for an hour. That light would be gone by the time the Marrow Fiend came back during the second watch. But Asher, who's a warlock, has the ability to cast a light spell too. And he's like, I think I'm going to cast it. He's not a very good caster, so he often fails this roll, but he made it this time. So after we'd been through all that discussion, it was decided that they did have a light on when the Marrow Fiend came by. So at that point I was like, well, there's no chance that it's going to miss them. It's going to see the light and it's going to come to investigate. Now, Ren and Asher were the ones that were up during that watch, which is why his spell was on during that watch. They both happened to roll really good wisdom checks to notice that something was coming. And so they were able to give the alarm. And so everybody woke up and scrambled and got their gear right as this Marrow Fiend's head pokes into their encampment, to the clearing that they were encamped in. And you know, it kind of looks like a wolf, but it's the size of a large horse, and it's got this kind of long crocodilian mouth, and its body is made of kind of like bent and dry wood, but it's oozing with a black sap, and it's got kind of like a rib cage. It's outside of its torso. It comes in, it gives a low growl, and then the combat started. The combat began with Kraith, Asher, and Ursula beating the demon on initiative. Kraith came running at the demon first, yelling and swinging his sword, and he went for a flank attack but rolled poorly, so the sword dinged off of the creature's exposed ribs, and then Kraith continued to run past the demon, trying to draw it away from the party. As the creature was contemplating turning towards Kraith, Ursula came up with her axe and hit the creature in the clavicle, while Asher came up running more or less at the same time, swinging his mace and holding a shield, and hit it in the snout with his mace. The creature reared back, shot a gout of sap out of its mouth that hit Ursula point blank, covered her entirely, and then her eyes open, kind of like Schwarzenegger when he's caked with the mud in Predator. She's still ready for action, but she's like stinging from this sap that has covered her and has kind of a burning quality. At that point, it clawed Asher and did damage to him as it leaped over Ursula and ran towards Kraith and hit Kraith with a claw when he landed over there. With that, the demon kind of turned its back to Ursula and Asher and the camp as it was pursuing Kraith. This allowed the other characters to act. Renwick cast Mage Armor and he rolled a natural 20, so he ended up with an 18 armor class. And Rowena, the witch, cast Eye Bite, which did damage to the creature's eye and kind of blinded it from seeing her for the next round. Ren, who was up in a tree, she had been taking her watch up in a tree, used her inspiration to give Kraith a luck token. So that's how the first round ended. The second round begins with an injured Kraith darting back into the wood, hoping to get some cover from the creature, hoping the creature will follow him, but also that it'll be harder for the creature to attack him if he's running through the wood. The creature, however, if it was thinking of chasing him, it gave up on that when Ursula and Asher came running up behind it and attacked it and did some damage to it. So it turned around to face them, used both of its claws, one on each of them, took down Ursula, who then I rolled to see how many rounds she had to live, and it was like 3 or 4 rounds, but took her down. Missed Asher, but jumped forward to face the rest of the camp, and then it was looking at Renwick. It shot its gout of sap out at Renwick. Originally I said that it was going to attack both Renwick and Rowena, but then Lauren reminded me that the eye bite meant it so that it couldn't see Rowena. I said, you're right. So the whole gout of sap just went straight for Renwick, hit him. Unfortunately, although Renwick had that 18 armor class, the creature rolled a 19 to hit, did 10 points of damage, and Renwick went down. So now we have 2 player characters down. Renwick also had about 3 or 4 rounds to live. Ren climbed down from the tree, threw her torch, hoping that the creature would be distracted by the torch, and ran for Ursula to try to stabilize Ursula. For her part, Rowena, who acted right before Ren, actually ran over to try to stabilize Renwick, but failed at the stabilization roll. So then we go to the next round. Unfortunately for Ren, the creature is not distracted by the torch. It's more intelligent than that. And the rest of the party saw it kind of grimace with a smile and track Ren as she was running towards Ursula. And they could tell that it was going to go and enjoy just like devouring her before she can get there. At that point, Kraith came around with his grappling hook, and which he had anchored to one of the trees, and he threw his grappling hook and hit the creature in the hind quarters and wrapped its leg up. And he rolled a natural 20 to do this. He failed, but then he used the luck token that Ren had given him to roll again, rolled a natural 20. So then I ruled that the creature jumped at Ren, but the rope pulled taut and it fell flat on its face, and it was going to lose all its attacks that round. So that's the benefit that I gave Kraith for the whole maneuver with the grappling hook thing. I did tell him though that the creature was going to get the opportunity this round to try to break the hold that the grappling hook at it, and it did it easily. So it snapped it, so that was only going to work for this round. With that, Asher moved in and hit the creature with the mace again, and the creature starts to growl and get back up. This round, Rowena is able to successfully stabilize Renwick, so Renwick isn't dying. Ursula is still dying. Ren was able to get up and start working on Ursula, but wasn't able to stabilize her the first round. Then we are back up to the next round. Kraith at this point goes to join the fight with Asher, so he runs in with his sword to attack the creature while it's kind of in the midst of its being disoriented. The creature gets up with Asher and Kraith right there and takes down Asher. So now we have 3 characters down, although one of them is stabilized at this point. People are convinced that there's going to be a total TPK in this battle at this point. I'm not sure where it's going. I actually thought that it was falling together pretty well for them, all things considered, but I think I heard them because we took a bio break and I heard them talking about the situation. They're like, this is the TPK, we're done. This is it's like, all right, let's see how it goes. At this point, I kind of lose track of the round by round, blow by blow kind of thing. So let me just tell you generally what happened. They managed to pull it off. Asher went down, but Ren was able to stabilize Ursula, and Kraith went toe to toe with the creature by himself in terms of actually facing it. At this point, it was concentrating all of its attacks on Kraith. Rowena, after stabilizing Renwick, cast invisibility on Renwick, but then she turned her attention to fighting the creature as well with spells. So while Kraith was keeping the thing engaged physically, she was casting Eye Bite on it, and in the first round of doing that, she rolled a natural 20, did 7 points of damage and popped one of its eyes. So it howls. We had 3 rounds of Kraith running from it, attacking it, the creature jumping after Kraith, the creature hitting him with another gout, but rolling 3 points of damage. But I just kept missing or rolling minimal damage. So I kept rolling 3s and 4s. The creature has a +7 to hit Kraith. Kraith has a 15 armor class, but I kept rolling 7s, 3s, 5s. And then when I would hit, I would do minimal damage. In the very last round of this, the creature was on Kraith. Kraith had fallen to the ground, was holding the creature at bay with a shield. The creature had one arm on each of his shoulders and was growling at his face, about to bite his face off. Rowena cast one more eye bite and popped its other eye, and the creature fell on top of Kraith. It was so satisfying. We play online, so I'm looking at everybody through Zoom, and you could see every time I roll a crappy roll for the creature to attack Kraith, or Kraith rolls a great roll, or Rowena rolls a great roll, you just see everybody on the other side. It was a really thrilling fight. I think the party does well to avoid fights as much as possible. I'm not saying I hope they suddenly become warmongers, because that might be a true road to TPKs in this game. They have sometimes run away from fights that they could win, I think, or missed out on something valuable because they weren't willing to take a risk. And I'm hoping that maybe this will embolden them a little bit, that they know that, especially at 3rd level, ShadowDark characters are not totally useless or weak. They can be kind of chunky. It's not like they've all rolled 1s for hit points all the way through. Anyway, that took up most of the session. The characters then spent some time licking their wounds, eating rations, resting. They made it to the shore, They used their torches to summon the fishermen who did come to get them. And then they decided that they would go back to Marin's Hold to reprovision. They didn't have food anymore. They didn't have torches. And so they needed to reprovision. That's where we kind of ended the session, except that when they got back to Marin's Hold, they decided that they were going to do a round of carousing. We had a couple characters that were also close to next level, so carousing might get them there. Marin's Hold was a little sticky because when they had left Marin's Hold, they knew that Marin's Hold was suspicious of wizards and witches, that they had recently executed several people accused of witchcraft because they thought that the witches were drawing demons to their settlement. People had eyes on Renwick and Rowena when they were there last, so they were a little nervous about going there, but they decided to go there nonetheless. We didn't roleplay all of that. What we did is that we rolled on the carousing table to see what the results were. It was determined that basically they came to town, they reprovisioned. Several of the characters ended up tricking people in the town, probably into thinking that Rowena and Renwick weren't with the party anymore. The table results said that Renwick ended up in the stronghold of the noble with a valuable possession in his hand. So we decided that that meant in the stronghold of the Reeve, who had been distracted by the trickery of the other characters, and he was left holding a magic staff that was +1 to hit, +1 damage, and gave advantage on initiative rolls. Then what was left is to see how he got out of there. So what we roleplayed was him and Rowena getting him out of there and avoiding the guard, and then the whole party fled Marin's Hold with their provisions and with their experience points and with the magic staff that the Reeve had taken from one of the witches that he had executed. And that's where we ended the session. Best laid plans, right? I prepped for something, didn't get to use any of my prep. Some random rolls generated some really fun encounters, some last minute player decisions. Now the party is kind of back in the Gloaming, more generally speaking, as opposed to being stuck in Bittermold Keep, and we'll see where we'll take it from here. They've already said we're going straight to the tower. So when we begin the next session, I'm going to put them at the shore of the tower. I'll ask them what arrangements they've made to get there, just so that we know how they're going to get back. But we're going to begin on the island where the tower is and see where it takes us from there. And it's a chance, there's a good chance that we'll be playing this tomorrow. So I should have the next play report for this up in a couple of weeks. So anyway, that's it. I hope you enjoyed that. And as always, I thank you for tuning in, and I wish you good health, good cheer, good gaming. Goodbye.